Good morning and good afternoon to myself. I know it's morning for Raj and for Sham. How are you guys today?
Doing well. Thanks, Ed.
Great.
Doing well.
I see that people are still coming in. And as people are coming in, I just want some folks to test some things if you're online. So if you're online, and I can see you online right now, if you see you've got a little hand raise button beneath the bottom of the orange arrow. So if you can hear us, please raise your hand. There, I see a couple of hands raising. Fantastic. Now I also want to test questions and answers. So if you see above that raise hand, go ahead and put in a question. Hi, Alyssa, how are you? Hi, Joaquin. Pat, nice to see you. Everything is on time there, Gustavo. All right, great. And a question here from Lucy. Why are we not using Zoho Meeting? Normally we would, and we use that for over 50 million customers. But for this panel, because we wanted to show 3 video screens wide, we decided to use this. We will be using Zoho Meeting on the next one. Hello, who's our tailor? I use Stitch Fix. Hello, everyone. All right, I wouldn't be my own tailor. All right, great. It looks like we have 38 attendees joining. Hi, and welcome to Zoho's Future of Work webinar. I've got a couple of guests with me today, and I'd like to introduce them. The first person I'd like to introduce is Raj Sublak. He's the president of Zoho Corporation. Hi, Raj.
Hey, Ed. Excited to be here today.
It's great to see you as well. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself as well as about Zoho? I put something up here for a little bit about Zoho as well.
Yeah, so just briefly on me, I'm a lifelong tech person. I grew up in Silicon Valley and basically destined to be in the industry. And that turned out to be the case. I've been in software ever since I graduated from college, and I love it. It's, I feel, the most exciting place to be. Zoho is interesting as well. For those that don't know us, I'll give you a little bit of a background, but I sometimes describe us as the oldest startup in the world. We've been in business for 24 years. We actually started here in Silicon Valley, where I am. I'm actually north of Silicon Valley in Pleasanton, California. And although we started here, we've taken a decidedly different route. As opposed to getting VC funding and trying to grow the company as fast as we could and either go public or sell, we decided that we wanted to bootstrap the company, and we wanted to build products that matter to customers. And if we did that, they would come, they'd pay us a fair amount of money, and we would continue to invest in the business and grow. And that's what's happened over the years. We still are on that track. We want to be a multi-generational company. No plans to sell or go public. We have an inordinate amount of investment in development. You can see that from our product portfolio. We've got this comprehensive suite of applications that address every functional area of business, sales, marketing, finance, communications and collaboration, you name it. Zoho's in the space. I mean, our ideal scenario is that we provide an operating system for our customers to run their business. So that's a little bit about us. Ed has a good graphic up there in terms of the feeds and speeds and the numbers. Those are even a little bit small these days. I think we're at 8,500 employees around the world. I think the application count may even be over 50 these days, coming out with a couple of new products just in the last month or so.
Great, Thank you, Raj. And we also have with us a good friend and a former colleague of mine, Sham Talong, who has a tremendous amount of experience in technology, large enterprises, and we worked together for a stint of about 4 years at LegalZoom together. Welcome, Sham.
Thank you, Ed. Thank you for the opportunity. Hello, everybody. Just to give you a quick background on myself, I've been in product technology operations arena for close to 30 years. And last 15 years spent time in online B2B, B2C, and SaaS businesses. Was at LegalZoom for 5 years, 5+ years as their COO and CTO. And also prior to that, I was the global CITO for Experian, a public company. I've been very fortunate that I've been involved in globally plus in companies that are public, startups, and privately held. So got different views because you get different perspectives, and involved in the board of a couple of companies. So got that perspective also, but appreciate the opportunity. Thank you.
Great. And my name is Ed Arsinway. I recently joined Zoho on February 17th, just before we all went to work from home, and joined with experience from Microsoft and Hewlett Packard and creative artist agencies and LegalZoom in sales and support and consulting and leadership roles. And I'm very happy to moderate this session today. Today, we're going to be talking about the future of work. And it's important to get a perspective about the future of work, starting with the past. And so we're going to spend just the first section on the events leading up to COVID, how companies think about disaster recovery and business continuity and how it was tested in this space. Then we're going to talk about the present. We're already 2 months into this. How is it going? How are companies reacting? What are the challenges that are emerging and new in this space? And how do leaders take a look at those challenges and deal with them? Then we're going to look at the future. What is going to happen as this crisis continues, as we start to see work get back to normal, if there is a normal, when that would take place, and how to think about and how to plan for what we're going to do about it. Before we get started, I'm going to do a quick poll. So on your screens, you should see a poll, and we'll take a minute to see what the responses is. How ready was your organization for the pandemic situation? Right. See, we've got about 61% voted in. All right. We're going to close the poll and take a look at this. You can see some organizations were very ready. Most were somewhat ready. Some were not ready at all. Let's talk about what it takes to be ready. Start with you, Sham. Before, when we talked about disaster recovery and the reality, we've done some tabletop exercises together in the past. We talked about the platforms and the tools that we have. Do we have the ability to handle things such as tornadoes or active emergency situations or fires or earthquakes? I don't think when we discussed these things before, we had thought about a pandemic as one of the things that we have to have business continuity and disaster recovery for. So when you think about your past and how to plan for these events and the structures that you put in place, what are the thoughts that you have about how that worked for this crisis?
So important to know, I've been primarily involved in products and services and marketing companies. And important to understand that anytime when you go through a budget, anytime when you go through prioritization, it's all about the products you launch, the marketing, how are you going to acquire new companies, and really things like business continuity, disaster recovery, all that goes to the backside because nobody is focused on that. And operations people, technology people are left to deal with those things in the back office somewhere in your basement, wherever you're dealing with it. Because everything is about, hey, have you acquired enough customers? Have you launched enough products? And that's where the focus is. And the most frustrating part for the people I'm involved with and the teams is, when this happened, the first question everybody asks is, why are you not ready? Why was this not taken care of? Why can't we support this remote workforce? And then it's like, were you not there? And that plan's happening, right? And so people forget also that this is a very different kind of event. It's not one system going down and you're trying to do DR, or one site going down because of a tornado. Is everything going down, right? It is your facilities going down, your partners going down, your public sector service providers going down, everything. Plus your people who are there to help make this come back up are also dealing with it. So it's a complete shutdown is what is really different about this. But because of budget constraints, because of things, what companies that I'm involved with, what they were forced to do, especially on the technology side and ops side, was they were looking for resources in low rate areas, whether it be offshore, whether it be in rural areas and things. So from a technology standpoint, it was good because we had to have infrastructure to support remote sites, but these remote sites were centralized sites. And which meant engineering, QA, and a lot of those functions was very easy. There was no issue at all. But where it really broke down was, the first issue was technology came up and said, hey, we are ready to go, we are all remote. But it is the business processes that truly got impacted, right? Businesses processes were not ready. I'll give you a great example. A place where I'm involved in right now, they told all their people to work from home. What they found is a lot of the people, especially the frontline workers who are involved in the call center, in printing stuff, they didn't have good equipment at home. So the company said, hey, come on in, take what you use at work. And a simple business process like asset management completely went out the window because people came, took stuff from their cubes, went home, there's no tracking, so what happens to your information security, your compliance? So that was the first big issue. Simple thing like asset management completely went out of the window. Second issue for the companies I'm involved in, very dependent on partners because of cost and because of the services they provide. We audited them, we looked at them, we did everything, visited them, but we never envisioned a place where our partners, especially those that are offshore, would have to work from home. We never checked their infrastructure, whether they can support a remote workforce. And that became a big issue. And where we struggled with and where we had to work is to get those partners onto our infrastructure so they had an infrastructure to support. And so those were kind of things that we had to deal with, right? Getting inside sales up and running, production and product fulfillment up and running, customer care up and running, all from home. And these were the business processes that we had to focus on. And I'm sure with Raj having a big organization that does a product has more to add to it.
Yeah, Raj, back to you. When we decided to work from home, I recall that it was early and I was still begging you to travel, and you're saying, no, I think you should stay home. And that was because it seemed a little early for us, and not everybody had shut down. But in 1 week, I think it was the first week of March, the decision was made to send everybody to work from home. Can you talk about that and how that happened? Why it was done early, and what were the consequences of such a decision?
Yeah, I do remember those first few phone calls, Ed, from you saying, you had a lot of excitement, just started, wanted to get out and visit customers, talk to partners and whatnot. And I said, hang tight, this seems a little bit different. And that was really kind of the discussion in amongst the executives. This certainly felt different. We were obviously looking to China and other areas and what was emerging there. And as you said, we made a decision early on, I think it was on the 5th of March. So, a few weeks before most companies, we made the decision that we were going to flip the switch. We were going to go work from home. And there were a couple of processes, namely our NOC in particular, the folks that really kind of monitor the data center services. we still had them coming in for about a day and a half, but by the 7th of March, everybody was remote. So in that respect, you know, in terms of business continuity, we did a pretty good job on getting 8,500 plus people to work from home right away. But to your other point, I haven't met or talked to anybody. Obviously, I'm not meeting a lot of people right now, but I haven't talked to anybody that said, you know, yep, we had that one. We had pandemic in our BCP, in our plan. And, you know, unfortunately, there's not many people that had that. And so when we walked in that morning, it wasn't like we turned to chapter 3 of our BCP and said, pandemic, let's, you know, go down the checklist. You know, what I think really put us in a position to make this transition well is our collective experience in dealing with crises. And I was thinking about it. We've had, you know, fortunately or unfortunately, several crises that have given us that experience over the last decade. I think about 2013 as being a real shock to the system. I remember back to when in 2013 we were about to start a user conference here in California, and I actually was walking up to the podium to start at 9 a.m. And what had happened is suddenly at 9 a.m. We experienced a DDoS attack, denial of service attack, which, you know, we've read about those, we've heard about them, but we were front and center with a denial of service attack, which basically renders your communications useless at that point, no internet access, and more importantly, so let alone we had hundreds of people in the audience, we also had all of our users that were impacted because our data centers were impacted. And so the point there is we learned from that experience. We learned like crazy. There was the short term learning in terms of how do we recover from this? How do we get our customers back online? Really scary stuff. And then we probably spent the next year building out our capabilities on the security side, building our infrastructure, making sure that we would reduce or hopefully eliminate a repeat of that type of attack. So these are all collective learnings. We actually learned how to deal with cyber terrorists, right? Because a lot of these DDoS attacks, and in our case, was perpetrated from these bad actors that were, you know, asking for 6 Bitcoin to turn off the DDoS attack. So that's all, you know, battle testing ourselves and learning. 2 years later, we experienced what I describe as a 100-year flood in Tamil Nadu, in Chennai in particular, which is our corporate headquarters in India. We have a 40-acre plus campus there that suddenly found itself underwater. And there again, we learned that we should distribute tasks across the world so that no single point of failure from a location would impact our business. We learned about work from home then because nobody could go into the office. We learned about reinforcing our communications, namely our phone systems, so support and customer support services would not go down. That's all the collective learnings. And then finally in 2017, we actually had a flood in our California offices based on what they call a fire riser bursting. And again, we learned different things from there. And so all of that, I think, put us in a position to respond really, really well, very quickly to the pandemic. The one thing, Ed, I would point out that's different about this crisis is that it not only affected Zoho and the company, but all the stakeholders, our employees, our customers, our suppliers, our partners, all the concentric circles. We've never seen anything like that. And, you know, it really gave us a whole new perspective. And, you know, again, hopefully we don't have to see this in a long, long time, but I'm sure it adds to our collective knowledge and learnings, and we're going to be even more prepared for the next one.
Right. You know, talking about what we're learning right now, we're now 6 weeks into this. Unlike the other events that you mentioned or the things that you might prepare for, typically a fire, a tornado, a flood, an outage, we're now 6 weeks into this pandemic. There is a lot of new things to learn. Like now when we look at where we are today, what are some of the things that are very concerned? And I'm going to put out another poll there. First of all, raise your hand if you are working from home today. Let's take a look at this. There's a lot of folks working from home. Not everybody gets that opportunity, especially when you're in essential services. Now, how's that feeling from a productivity standpoint? How many feel that the productivities of their organization have been negatively impacted? I know some people are very happy and more productive, but how do you guys feel about that? All right, I'm getting some surprising results. I'm going to close the poll now and display them. So most people say they have the same level of productivity, which is fantastic. There's some that have had a negative impact, and an even larger group that has improved productivity, which is great news for those that have been able to adapt to this. I was just looking at a recent study done across multiple companies, and their results are much less positive. So this is a great group in terms of being proactive. And probably you're on this because you want to be proactive about dealing with this crisis. But I was looking at a Forbes poll today, and the majority of people feel overwhelmed. They feel anxious. They're fearful of their jobs. A majority of people don't feel like they have the tools to do their job well, and that's more in the 60, 70, and sometimes 90%. So let's talk about that briefly. Sham, when we talk about workers and employees and the folks that you lead, they are dealing with, not only are we dealing with something new, but they're also dealing with something new. From a leadership perspective, in the middle of this, what are some of the things that apply to leadership and philosophy from your perspective?
Yeah, I think it's important to recognize that in this new world of working remote, working from home, working virtually, what productivity means has to be redefined a bit. It doesn't mean the same thing where you showed up at 8 and left at 5 or whatever your flexible work environment was. Everybody I talked to, yesterday I was talking to one of my colleagues who used to be the VP of PMO, and he said, hey, people did save time on commute, but now it takes a lot more effort to collaborate and align because you're all remote. You have to get on the same page. So how do you calculate that in your productivity? How do you define that in your productivity? I think also for employees, from an employee standpoint, and it's very hard to measure some of those subjective things because it's no longer just velocity and quality. It is also about how do you collaborate? How do you align? How do you communicate? All that gets into that play. More important, what I'm also hearing is the conversations. It may look like productivity is the same, like it showed in your poll, but when you truly do surveys, when you do talk to the employees, what you're finding is the discussion is moving away from work-life balance to home-life balance. And what do I mean by that? when people are at home, when you go to work, you at least get to forget a little of the home for a little time. But when you're at home and working, you're fully on for the home life, and you're also fully on for the work life. And there's no break because and what we're hearing is people are feeling a lot more stressed. People are feeling a lot that they're working longer because you may take a break in the middle to deal with your homeschooling and the rest, but when you come back, your boss or others don't know what's going on at home. It's like riptides, right? You're keeping everything calm on top, but at the bottom, it's all slushy. And that's what is coming. Now, if you're using offshore resources, one of the things we are finding is if you're using resources in Vietnam or in India and some of the other countries, a lot of them live in high density apartments and things. For them, work from home is a burden because they may be all living in a single room thing, and they can't do a video conference like we do, so for them, when we talk in terms of productivity, there are other issues that go also that we may not think about, and I think people are forced now to think in those terms. And Raj, you probably have better examples of those because you have a large team offshore.
Yeah, that's right, John. I think it's interesting. You know, way I describe it is this, for me, is a crisis that's testing our EQ, right? Our emotional quotient, both of employees as well as management. You know, the productivity side, I would agree with the poll results. And I think, you know, we made that transition, as I said, very quickly. We had the functional areas, sales, marketing, and support, up and running very, very quickly. And so we were there for our customers. The thing I would say on productivity is that we're there and we're ready, but you know, the world wasn't necessarily ready to, you know, engage with Zoho or any other vendor at this point. So we had to, in some sense, wait for our customers to come back online and be ready to start working again. But getting back to the EQ side, what I certainly noticed was the psychological impact and dynamics of work from home. Yeah, as you know, Ed, we've got a large contingency of young professionals working for the company. And in many cases, they are just coming from school and starting at Zoho. And we still as Zoho continue that ongoing care. For example, we serve every meal at our large facilities. And so we've got these young 20-something folks that have been able to count on Zoho to give them food, provide gyms and other amenities that they're used to every day. They no longer have that. So that's a shock to their systems. And, you know, they have the feeling of isolation and loneliness that Sham alluded to. We definitely saw that. So on the EQ side, we really needed to figure out how do we make our employees really feel comfortable with what was happening as much as we could. And so we had to become good listeners because, you know, we certainly didn't have all the answers day one. And, you know, I think there's still a lot of question marks out there. So we needed to be good listeners, and when we had answers, we provided them. We said that there's things out there that we just don't know, but we're going to be transparent with you, and as things arise, we'll let you know. But it's our intention to take care of our employees, and that's our priority number one, and along with our customers. So that was kind of the focus. It was less about hitting people on metrics of productivity. We knew that was in place. It was these EQ things that we had to deal with.
Hey, I want to add one more thing, if you're okay, Ed.
Yes.
The last place I was at, and and a couple of other places I'm involved in, there was also a have and have not syndrome when you look at productivity. As leaders, you got to really pay close attention because everybody's excited, they're up and running, you got your tech folks launching your sites and doing all that stuff. But there was a lot of frontline workers who had to be in an office environment because they are either printing paper or they're doing something physical to launch the product or deliver the product. And what you'll quickly find is there is this chasm between the haves and have-nots, and you got to think through that as you think through productivity also. And a lot of times what we also learned is a lot of the people who are in the front lines, sometimes in the financial services place, the legal space and everything else, is also dependent on public sector, which is completely not ready for this. And we're finding that things like if you're dependent on IRS, if you're dependent on the Secretary of State, if you're dependent on a lot of the public sector organizations, you may think your supply chain is digitized, but it completely comes to a halt because they're not doing anything on the back end. And what we've learned is the impact is more on the frontline workers, more than the corporate finance and HR and product and technology. And you got to be very sensitive to that too, because when productivity question comes up, the impact is felt there quite a bit.
Yeah, I definitely can see that. There are people, especially in essential workers or the type of role they have to go to work.
Yeah.
And
And
there's
they
safety
can't, right?
concerns, health concerns, and there's really no choice. And even for workers that are home that have different living situations or family situations, it's going to be more difficult if you have small children where their schools have also shut down and they have to work from home. So I think that empathy of listening and understanding that people are in different situations open up the facts that there are different strategies, different communication styles, and different processes that has to be taken into consideration over and above just the productivity and the platform side. So I think that's very clear. So listening is a big one, understanding is a big one. Anything else you'd like to add on the EQ side from a leadership perspective? Because I do want to move into also some of the hard topics around security, asset management, and privacy.
Be present and visible, whether it is physically or digitally. They need to see their leaders. They need to see a smile, right? That things will be okay, and be transparent. And when there is communication void, there are rumors, right? Yeah. People fill those voids, and so it's important to be present and be transparent, whether it is digitally through whatever mechanism your company uses. It's an important one.
Yeah. Raj, I know we do a lot of communication. What's your thought process about that?
Well, you know, as you've been indoctrinated now, you know, we're heavy tech users. We use our own technology. So, you know, it's easy for us to spin up audio calls very, very quickly. We are, you know, always on chat, real-time communications. If we need to do a video call, we have those capabilities as well. So I would say, you know, it's really true. You're able to kind of bridge the gap leveraging technology, and that's something that that we were able to do, namely because we had that technology and we were, you know, one of the points I should make also is one of the first things we did after we figured out that we had everything working and we had all the technology in place is that amazingly, we were able to package up a work from home solution and offer it to customers, really anybody. And we put it out as part of an assistance program, free of charge, a work from home in a box set of technologies. And we launched that a week after going from work from home. So not only were we able to work from home, we showed we were able to develop product and put it out as well.
Yeah, I definitely feel that the focus on serving customers and serving other people is really probably a big part of the EQ, that is a good leadership practice moving forward. Getting into some of the issues, I mean, a lot of companies are faced with the issues of reduction of their customer base because a lot of the customers are negatively impacted, and there's no recourse for it. If you're in a stadium, or if you're in an event, or uh, you're retail based, there, and you don't have delivery capabilities or online capabilities, a lot of those companies are shuttering down for a while, and there's a lot of government assistance programs for those, and even every company is somewhat touched by those. Sham, you mentioned a few points, not just the partnerships and the relationships, but issues with asset management, security, and privacy. How is this different than other considerations? Because that's always a top of mind for you when you're looking at technology and operations. How is this different, and how are you recommending that folks respond to this particularly dynamic time?
Right. So if you go back and look at any regulation, right, whether it is GDPR, whether it is PCI, whether it is privacy, if you look at any of those three, Cal Privacy, if you look at New York's privacy policy, it's based on all about the data being centralized and all of it being in a controlled environment. So whether it is your inside sales, your contact center, your production, it's all in lockdown spaces. It's all the policy, the regulations are written that way, right? So it's all about, hey, do you have a contact center, everything locked down, 3 badges, all that stuff. To now, all that is out of the window, right? Because like the last place we worked at, Ed, all the call center folks and inside sales are working from home, right? They're working from their whatever room, their living rooms, wherever they're working from, it's going over their broadband. And now the data is flowing all over the place. So the big questions that are coming up, even though our customers especially the big banks and others for a little while have forgotten about what they're asked for, now they're slowly coming back and saying, hey, where's our data going? Where's our teams? Now that it's been 6 weeks, they're all coming and asking those questions. And what we are finding ourselves in is, in some cases or many cases, we may be out of compliance with a lot of the things that we said we would do because that was all based on physical location and things. So number one is we're all looking at saying now, how do we, because the genie is out of the bottle, right? Our customers will want us to go back to a controlled environment, but our employees will say, hey, I like this. I like the flexibility that one day my child is sick and I might want to take the calls from the home and I don't have to come into the call center. That's not going away now. So now everybody is saying, okay, let's go through our SOPs, let's go through our policies and procedures and rationalize it for this new norm. And a lot of focus is going on that around privacy, around where are your assets, not just your physical assets, your soft assets, your data assets. A lot of that is going on, and a lot of thinking around that is going on. Because there's no right way or wrong way, because nobody knows what that right way is, right? Everybody's trying and saying, oh, maybe this is the right way to do it. And that a focus is on that.
Yep. Now, Raj, Zoho has been more on the aggressive edge of protecting privacy and security, as far as the policies I see and the programs they have. How is this how's this pandemic affecting some of those policies, especially work from home for the several hundred people that we have supporting customers and accessing data?
Yeah, so, one of the things that I believe will come out of this for businesses is that there are some, added benefits in this regard to being on the cloud, right? Most organizations have put a lot of investment in making sure that they're able to connect to corporate data stores, and they're able to do that in a secure manner. And in our case, since most of our virtually all of our applications are in the cloud, on the Zoho cloud, we communicate under HTTPS, right? So it's a very secure communication And we feel good about that, as opposed to having a virtual network that we have to set up. We do have those in case we need them, but it's more of an N+1 item because everything is in the cloud. So, like I said, what I see is organizations are going to look at this moving forward and try to be less tethered to on-prem type solutions and move more to these secure cloud SaaS type environments. I think that's really helpful. Then, of course, from input devices, endpoint management becomes very critical. I think Sham kind of alluded to this as well. You still have to ensure that you know, your employees are doing the right thing with data, making sure that they're still adhering to GDPR or CCPA, those sorts of things. And that's where some of the IT management tools become that much more important. And I'm thinking about, like I said, endpoint management in particular, so you can kind of really control what's coming off devices like laptops and mobile phones and things like that. And I think that's all doable. All that technology is out there, and it's just going to continue to be enhanced.
Yep. You know, when thinking about the future, it's hard to predict where this is going to end. I'm going to do a quick poll here and see what people feel, how long they think the COVID-19 social distancing restrictions will last. Less than 3 months, less than 6 months, up to 2022, indefinitely. And I'll give you the opinion of what some scientists are saying as well. Okay. I'm going to close the poll now and take a look at the results. So here we have some optimistic folks thinking less than 3 months, and then almost the same, indefinitely to a certain degree. All right, given that reality, and I think when I was looking at some articles today, from Harvard scientists, they're saying that, you know, the social distancing rules are here to stay. In some cases, you know, may last until 2022. And so there may be, you know, this fear of a second wave. We're not quite sure where this is going. I'm going to show a quick dashboard in a couple of minutes while I'm setting that up. What does the future look like, and what do we stop doing? What do we start doing? Where do you think we should be doubling down as leaders in this particular space? And I'll start with Raj this time, and then move to Sham.
Yeah, so I mean, a lot of things come to mind, Ed. I mean, as you know, when this hit, one of the first things we did as we were going through the work from home process is that, you know, we kind of stopped everything, right? And we re-looked at strategies, we looked at resource allocation, expenses, all those sorts of things, and considering what was going on, we made changes. I am happy to say that on the resource allocation, an interesting story. You know, we found out there's going to be certain groups that are just not going to be needed in terms of their function at this point in time. So how do we reallocate them? A good example is our events team. We weren't going to be doing physical events for a while, so that team was actually a good sized team, and they had very talented people. So where could we put them? And in certain cases, we took people and we put them in sales and customer service type positions so that we could address customer needs and requirements and keep them very engaged with the business. So there is this kind of reset, if you will, that needs to happen on the strategy side, namely from a product perspective. We recognized very quickly that there was going to be certain solutions that were going to be much more interesting right now for customers. And of course, those would be things like work from home type technology. So we prioritize those. And then, next, what we realized that this is not a time to be out there hard selling, right? And so on the expense side, one of the things we did was we pulled back, considerably on marketing and marketing spend. We just didn't think people are going to be listening, nor it was, like I said, nor was it the right time to really push hard from a sales perspective. It was a time to help our customers, right? So as you know, Ed, we started many subscription assistant programs, free technology to help pull customers through this. And I'd like to say this is all altruistic, but in some sense, the faster we can get customers up and running again, the faster we're going to start to see a normal economy and normal business. So we're helping customers get there. And so that was kind of the new priority for us. And then long term, we all were pretty convinced that as a world economy coming out of this, certain industries would lead, and tech would be one of those. And we've, talked here about some of the things that are going to change. Would work from home continue to be a component of how we address work? We think so. Less business travel, less hotel stays, things like that. And a lot of that can be mitigated, or alternative solutions can be put in place through technology. So we're comfortable and optimistic about our long-term future coming out of this, but we knew that there were several steps until we got to that end game, and we're trying to address those steps in between, namely the plight of our customers and the plight of our employees, and like I said earlier, this concentric circle of people that have been affected.
Thank you. We're running on time, so I do want to close with some Q&A. Before I do that, Shyam, any quick thoughts about the future? Especially now that
make it very quick. What I'm seeing out there is all the companies, many of the companies were all in growth mindset, trying to grow, trying to increase revenue and all that stuff. Now in this new world, there are just a very few companies that are very fortunate through this bad thing to being able to grow. So what I'm seeing is everybody is going into a protect and monitor mode. Protect the employees, protect your revenue, protect and protect. And so reallocation of investment, say from commercial real estate, as Raj said, from T&E into the people, into the thing. And always helps me thinking in terms of the people, process, and platform, right? And the investment is around three big subject areas: is health and safety, whether it's your people and your facilities. We are seeing a lot of redoing of processes because it's no longer physical, it's remote. And a lot of investment in virtual desktops, DLP for data protection, because when your users are all over the place, how do you monitor where your data is going? And tools beyond Zoom and Team, right? Industry-specific tools that are very specific to industries and how to collaborate and all that stuff. And so that's where we are seeing that.
Great. All right, I'm gonna start doing question and answer. I know that folks might be short on time. We're gonna stay on for the next 12 minutes for folks that can stay on, and we're gonna answer the questions that come. I have some questions here that are coming in, and I just want to start to address them now. First question is from Maurice. Shyam and Raj speak about experiential history. How has that become learning to be reviewed and practiced periodically? So maybe paraphrasing that, you mentioned some of the things that created some of the resilience in our system. How do we turn that into current learning, and what are we learning right now? Thank you, Maurice.
Thank you, Maurice. I think the silver lining in this is there is awareness across leadership about the need for supporting BCP and remote users and things. So that awareness has come, right? So what you're going to see, not just at the day-to-day level, at the board level, and at the management level, just like because of the breaches in big companies, security became so critical and identity management became so critical, and it gets reviewed. We are going to start seeing this also becoming like that. And that's going to force the risk committees or whatever committees your organization call it. This becomes a key component of a monthly review, quarterly review, and gets identified as a key risk that gets now managed and monitored at all levels. And that's what we are advising people, saying that, hey, this like information security should become a key component of your risk committee at a board level. Your C team has to think about it differently, and your day-to-day managers have to think about it differently, and this has to become a key component of that.
Before we go on, I just want to, for anyone that needs to leave, say thank you very much for attending, and thank you, Raj and Sham. As I said, we'll stick around a little longer for some Q&A. We also have, we will reach out to you both with surveys and with contact information of how to get in touch with us and ask further questions, and really just thank you everybody for taking the time to join. We're going to continue with Q&A for those that can stick around, and I'll read some of the questions out there. And if you have some additional ones, we'll also continue to answer these questions and collect them and send them to attendees as well. One question that came from Safira Dani. Can you share with us how you and your partners dealt with the poor and unstable last mile internet connectivity challenges in offline locations? So when people went offline and work from home, you know, how do you deal with the last mile situations? In fact, you know, even today for myself, I had a last mile situation where my internet was not working last night, and I was getting concerned, and I called Spectrum, and they showed it this morning and ensured that it was working. And I'm glad that I'm able to be heard and seen and posting, but I was a little bit nervous about my own last mile. How do you deal with that organizationally?
Sham, you want to jump in, or you want me to?
You take first, and then I think you're probably more relevant with a big workforce in India and all that stuff.
Yeah. So it's a really good question for us, as Sham alluded to. You know, we've got people that have, you know, one of the kind of things we saw in India is not only do you go when you work from home in this crisis, you just didn't go back to your local location. A lot of our staff went back to their native hometowns and villages, right? And so that's where you really do worry about connectivity and speed and so forth. And you know, thankfully in this crisis we haven't noticed any major issues, but I'll go back to the kind of collective learnings that we've picked up through other crises. I talked about how we had that DDoS attack and really brought down our internet and connectivity. You know, how we went on with that event, by the way, is we very quickly went out to Best Buy and we picked up all these hotspots so that we could continue with our online applications, and we could also give access to the internet to the attendees to our user conference. And that stuck with us. It's actually kind of an N+2, N+3 solution where if all hell breaks loose, you have something, right? And we still have these hotspot disks that we keep around and we give to people that need access or feel like there's going to be an issue with access wherever they're headed. So that's a little bit of an anecdotal story. Like I said, knock on wood, and thankfully we haven't experienced that, but many people pick up these hotspots just in case.
Okay. Let's do a couple more questions before closing out. A question from Lucy. Can we build on the point of the rest of the world not being ready inquiries died off and they come back. But what industries will survive the best outside of government and Fortune 500? And this goes to a discussion that you and I had like a week or two ago when we were taking a look at statistics. Like, what are the patterns that we're seeing in industries, geographies, and what can you anticipate in terms of the type of industries that will survive best, outside of government and the Fortune 500? One, I'll just talk to Sham about your experience, how companies can adapt and adjust to these environments and what industries seem to be doing great there. And then to Raj, what are we seeing, with even our own customers of what businesses or types of industries are doing well?
So thank you for the question. This is going to be really interesting how all this pans out, because it's all going to depend on how digitized can the supply chain of that industry be. I'll give a simple example. Last week, I did a refinancing of my loan. Everything was okay till it came to I had to notarize the papers. And California requires wet signature. That means I have to physically sign the paper. And there was no notary open to come. And finally, when they came to my driveway, and he left the paper on the hood and said, sign it. And there were tabs where to sign, and that's it. And so the industries that are like banking is really ready. I think financial services, for example, checks, you don't even need to go into a bank. You can just take a picture and the mobile app takes care of the rest of it. But it's all going to depend on industries that are ready for digitized supply chain. And it can be in retail, it can be in food services, it can be anything. But can that supply chain be digitized? And the question from the previous person about the last mile is not just about network, it's the last mile. How do you deliver the last mile? How do you get the notary to go to the last mile? And it's those things, whoever solves for those or can solve for those and have alternatives, those are the industries that survive. And those that can't or won't, that's where you'll see true impact.
Yeah, let me reposition that question and add another question for Raj, because another question coming here is, what are some good apps that help monitor remote work and productivity? And I think this goes to some of the awareness building that we're trying to do with Zoho, because we believe that we have some of these apps that will help, because it as Sham said, it's more on your readiness and your adaptability than your industry. You could be in the food service industry, but if you have developed the processes and figured out how to deliver to the last mile, or if you're in the financial service industry and you have the capabilities in place, it's going to be very different for you than another company in the same industry that's not ready. So Raj, back to you. And more like to answer, what are some of those good apps? What helps companies through these issues, especially when it comes to monitoring remote work productivity, or in general, how to thrive through this crisis, how to adapt to it?
Yeah, I think there's, I personally have a couple of perspectives on that, and let me just give you my philosophy. As a manager, I'm not big on the big brother side of things, but there's certainly certain things that need to be monitored very closely. And the good news is, I think a lot of the business applications have it built in, right? So when you think about chats and things like that, it's very easy to see if people are online. If you think about CRMs, well, one, if you're in the sales business, the ultimate metric to show productivity is, what are you selling? And so that one's easy to check. But even further, you can see, are these remote sales reps, as an example, are they making the calls? Are they filling in the information on the CRM? Those things are all tracked and reportable and there. So I think the good news is the technology is there to ensure that workers can be productive. Whether you want to monitor to that degree, I think that's going to vary by industry, but it's all there. If you think about marketing, what are you doing from a lead gen perspective? Is marketing generating leads? Those are the important questions for me. Are the top line KPIs happening? And if they're not, why not? And then we have these tools that can help identify where we may be getting off track. I think that's all there.
Well, fantastic. I think we're going to end on that question. We will answer any other questions that come in. And I just want to take a moment to thank everybody for attending remotely on this day, and thank especially Shyam for bringing his wisdom and experience in this industry to bear in terms of how the philosophy of dealing with the future of work is going, and to Raj, the president of Zoho, for talking about how we're dealing with it, what we're doing to help our customers and our employees. Thank you again to everybody for coming and joining us online, and look forward to another webinar as we dig deeper into some of these topics. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.